I live more on mission in the States than I would do in Uganda. People's faith expression is much different than it is in the States. And so I feel that I'm on this end doing more of a digging.
Because there are certain things that are default in my nature that are like defaults in a lot of like West African countries. Like
every area is different. The way we do ministry in Uganda is great. The way you do ministry in Ventura is great. And the way you do ministry in Thousand Oaks is great, but they're going to be different. Here, I'm learning and studying and growing an understanding of the people so I can even love them more so because it's really not my cultural context.
I like that you say like on mission in Uganda, even though like you're from, just move the mic. even though you're from Uganda, it's still like, this is a place where I'm on mission at.
Yeah, and I always tell people honestly that I live more on mission in the States than I would do in Uganda. Where in Uganda I feel more comfortable. The temperature for the creative juices personally, and also people's faith expression is much different than it is in the States. And so I feel that I'm on this end doing more of a digging and an arduous work, a joyous, glorious weight on this end than I am in Uganda. And that just, I guess, would be because I grew up there. So there's that aspect. Maybe I'm more comfortable with that. But here, I'm learning and studying and growing an understanding of the people so I can even love them more so because it's really not my cultural context, even though I was born here. Yeah,
definitely. And I'm trying really hard to navigate some of those similar things. I'm a little bit younger than you are, and I feel like I started doing ministry when I was in high school, right? And it was kind of like doing high school ministry as a high schooler is really just, hey, go hang out with your friends and talk to them about Jesus.
Yeah.
Then when I graduated, I moved from Canyon Country, which was, like a pretty diverse area. And at the time I was going to a Nigerian church.
What's Canyon Country?
Santa Clarita.
Santa Clarita, that's Canyon Country, gotcha.
But there's a section of Santa Clarita called Canyon Country. It's kind of where
all the Nigerians settled?
Well, it's where those who cannot afford to live in other parts of Santa Clarita.
I see, the hood.
I'm just kidding.
Shout out Canyon Country.
Canyon Country's great, but when I moved to Thousand Oaks to go to college, still same thing. I was doing high school ministry. I was starting to notice some differences because the church that I was going to was like all white church. This area, it's like a retirement town. And I was like, I noticed little things here and there that were strange. And I was like, oh, well, that's just an age difference. Like it's an older demographic. Therefore, I'm interacting with them and they say different things, or the way they express their faith is a little bit differently. Yeah. Then after I graduated college, now I'm not as much hanging out at this liberal arts college that I went to. Shout out Cal Lutheran. But now I'm literally just spending time around Thousand Oaks people. And these last 2 years have been so hard. Just trying to figure out like how to build meaningful relationships with people. Because there are certain things that are default in my nature that are like defaults in a lot of like West African countries, like, directness and forwardness, the things are a little extra jokey, like you don't take yourself too seriously. And you switch between the seriousness and the jokiness really fast. Whereas here, there's a lot more stoicism. There's a lot more of a sense of people don't say what they mean all the time. Someone could dislike you for months and not say anything. Like you walk into a Nigerian church, they'll tell you exactly how they feel about you. Even like a white person walks into a Nigerian church, they're like, hey, welcome.
Welcome, white man.
Welcome, white man.
Are you lost?
And there's things are just out on the table. Things are just there and seen and plain. And I think now going to the church that we go to, yeah, it's a predominantly white, evangelical, traditional kind of church. Your average church that you'd walk into a major city, find the nearest mega church, it's going to look a lot like our church. And I think navigating friendships, navigating relationships, navigating how do I do ministry in this context, I find myself fumbling the bag a lot more than I am securing the bag.
Yeah,
At least with young adults.
Yeah.
I don't know. How are you able to... It seems like, from an outsider's perspective looking in, that you're doing an amazing job. I don't. How are you doing that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that I am necessarily a guru on this, but I think I mentioned earlier just being able to study where we are. Every area is different. The way we do ministry in Uganda is great. The way you do ministry in Ventura is great. And the way you do ministry in Thousand Oaks is great, but they're going to be different. And I think acknowledging those differences and then learning to move in between what is good in one space and transferring over, being aware that some things don't fit. Like the nature of relationships here, for example, talking about, let's say, 18 to 30-year-olds in this area is very transient, right? It's a very transient community. And so there are people who are looking for identity. There are people who are looking for relationship, and yet they are also people who struggle with commitment. And so I think giving them an understanding of what and why, they should be committed, especially to the local church that helps build identity, that releases people into gifting. I think there's a big idea in just churches in general that they want to tie young people down so they can do stuff and serve. Because the Bible says, the glory of the young man is his youth. And I believe that, yes, young people should be a part of healthy community in our church. But I think if the overarching call is to make disciples, right, is to make disciples, which is Matthew 28, 19 and below, we're called to make disciples, then the bigger thing then is to release people into their giftings. The world would see it like adding value. The more you add value to people's lives, the more they know that you are for them and you're not for your own thing and for your own program or for your own deal. I've done weddings of people that I were in my first youth group way back when, and why would they still call me to do weddings? Because the Lord allowed me to give of myself, which is a process. I had no patience for children, period, when I was younger, and so here I am down the line. The Lord, through that period, gave me the heart of a father and taught me how to give self-sacrificially, to pour into people's lives. And I think learning those dynamics and how they shift with maybe a more transient community like we're talking about in this space, or one that is more willing to settle down, that, okay, how do you add value to those people in that space? I was listening to a podcast, I think by Preston Sprinkle, Theology Proper. I think that's what the podcast is, and he was interviewing another guy who was talking about doing ministry in somewhere in Africa. I'm trying to remember where. I think it was Western Africa, and how the way that he used to do ministry was go in and to build wells and do all these things. And you get on a plane or do a crusade and you're the main speaker and people put their hands up for the Lord, which is great. It's awesome, right? Right. But there's no follow-up, which has always been my issue. Even when we did Fishers of Men in Uganda, like is a ministry my father had begun and then I came in to take over, was there must be effective follow-up in a community that's willing to dig in. Because like you said, that community is more willing to dig in, to grow roots, to get to know one another. And so you say, okay, then creatively, you have to figure out how to be a good disciple maker, and then invite other churches in and say, hey, I want you to be available for people once they give their lives to the Lord, and do actual follow-up so that people aren't having emotional responses or are unsure of what why'd they put up their hands? Why do I feel the way I feel? This is like the parable of the sower kind of a deal. And so let it land on good soil and then have faithful people come in to help that grow. So I think, like I said earlier before, trying to understand the nuances of each community. In Thousand Oaks, sports is the god of everything. That's what people, almost beyond the dollar amount, which I think dollar amount goes far in every area of like people in America, period. Materialism is one of those things. But in this area, it's sports. Just down the grade, it's not going to be sports. In Ventura, Oxnard, sports is not the thing, right? But in this area, sports is the thing. And so then how do you, help people see their idols, help them be free of their idols? How do you help them do that? Those are things that I practically work through. I guess that's how that answers your question. I try to see how to give the way God has asked us to in every context. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's something about what you're saying that's like necessitates a sense of self-forgetfulness where we often, or at least what we're told by culture is you want to do what makes you happy, or do what you love. You're never going to work a day in your life, and all these things about happiness, trying to find your true joy, chase after your passion, etc. But if you want to do ministry effectively, and if you want to, be a, you mentioned earlier, like being a third culture kid, but like to exist in culture, as if you think about it, like we were once of the world, and now we're like of God's kingdom, and now we're trying to live in a space of like this ministry world. It's not necessarily being the same thing, but it's there is a sense that like you're gonna need to have a really small ego. You're gonna need to let go of a whole lot of pride and a lot of what you want, and listen and wait and be patient. And I'm not used to being in a community where people they come and then they just disappear sometimes. Like I lead a co-ed small group here, and when the group first started, they sent us 6 names, and I was like, oh, perfect size. Hit the mic again. 6 people, 2 leaders. This is nice. Then they sent us 2 more names, and they sent us more. And before I was like, hey, this group is too big. We can't shepherd these people well. Like we got to split. We got to do something. And then what started to happen over time, like people would come, they'd leave. One guy was like, actually, I'm going to a Chinese church now. He's not Chinese. He was just going to a Chinese church for some reason.
Those is people, bro. Come on, man.
It's true.
Every tribe, tongue, and nation,
Every tribe,
bro.
tongue, and nation.
Sheesh. We'll be hating on the guy going to the Chinese church.
Yeah.
Jeez.
That it's been interesting seeing someone like, one person might be like, hey, I'm trying out this small group, and I'm trying out that small group, and I'm trying out another one, and I'm going to this other church, and I'm kind of between jobs right now, but that's just the zone some people are in, and they're 23, 24, 25, some like in their early 30s, and they're still just trying a bunch of things out and haven't really committed. And to me, my default is to say, you need to learn to commit, you need to learn to grow roots, but I can't put that on them. That's not what they're ready for yet. What they need from me is to say, I'm here for you. And hey, here's Jesus. Let's get to know Jesus together in community. And all the rest of the stuff, all the practicality of like what's the best way for them to live their life, they are going to figure that out. And God is going to place people in their lives who they give the permission to say, hey, Aaron, I want you to be my mentor, or like, what do you think I should do? Or they'll find a couple or a person who they do listen to, and I need to know, my job might not always be to speak into someone's life and tell them what they should do. It's to tell them, I'm here for you, and let's get to know Jesus together.
Yeah, no, yeah, I totally agree. Where they say your presence is a present, just being present is a big part of that. And this is like what John the Baptist and Jesus, the disciples, come over and they're like, hey, that Jesus guy you baptized is baptized even more people on the side of the river. And Jesus' response, John the Baptist's response is like, man, you can only be given what you're given, And then he goes, that's the guy I told you about, And I think that's one of the things in being humble in every season and every person's life. There are people who you may never see again, but your role is to be faithful to the word, present the word, live the word, to the best of your ability that God gives you by his grace, and trust that it will bring back a fruit, because you don't know. One conversation here might launch someone into something else, and they meet someone in Chicago and give their lives to the Lord and become committed to a church there. But the things that you exemplify, that you show in your faithfulness, you can't beat the faithfulness of the ox. Like, you just can't. That will speak volumes to them, and they will be lessons that they learn and hold on to help them grow over they're planted. So